Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us. Today we are going to be diving into the world of Fujoshi.
Fujoshi.
Yeah, and I know that may sound a little intimidating to some folks who aren't familiar.
Right.
But really we're talking about women who enjoy BL content.
Yes.
Boys love.
Boys love.
And the really interesting thing is that fascinating look at how this fandom is perceived and how it's grown, especially in Asia.
And it is a global phenomenon now, but these sources really focus on the Asian perspective. So that's going to be really interesting, I think.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of unpack how the term Fujoshi itself kind of evolved and developed. And then what exactly draws women to this genre.
Yes.
And then ultimately why it matters. Like, why should we care?
Yeah, why is it important? And it's interesting because in these sources, the term Fujoshi, it seems like it emerged from online forums in Japan in the early 2000s.
So not that long ago, really.
Not that long ago, no.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because it wasn't a label like imposed from outside.
Oh, interesting.
But rather something that came from within the community itself.
So they were essentially naming themselves.
Exactly.
Which speaks to a kind of self-awareness, right?
Exactly. It's like they were recognizing their shared interest and they needed a way to identify themselves as a group. And what I think is really interesting is the choice of the word which means rotten.
Oh, wow.
So if you think about it, the term Fujoshi literally translates to rotten woman.
Rotten woman.
Yeah. And initially it seems like there was almost a sense of self-deprecation. Like maybe they were acknowledging that their love for BL was something kind of outside the norm, maybe even a little bit rotten, you know, by society's standards.
It's like they were saying, we know this is weird, but we love it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's like embracing that outsider status.
Yeah.
But kind of with a sense of humor and a little bit of irony.
Well, and over time, Fujoshi became the more widely accepted term for this.
Right. But that initial feeling of being rotten or different really highlights the social pressure that these fans felt.
Yeah.
You know, even today, some sources mention like Fujoshi hiding their interests because of the stigma attached to it.
That's sad. Especially considering how diverse the BL world actually is.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I've seen in these sources, it's not just one thing. We're talking novels, manga, illustrations, even live action dramas.
All of that. It's a multimedia genre.
It's massive.
And even within those formats, you have subgenres, character tropes, different levels of explicit content.
Okay.
It's a very vast...
So there really is something for every taste.
There is, yes. You've got original stories, adaptations from existing works, even like BL scenarios inspired by real-life celebrities.
It's really no different from any other genre when you think about it.
Right.
Like, how many subgenres of sci-fi or romance exist?
Exactly. But because BL occupies kind of a more niche space within entertainment, Fujoshi often face this challenge of finding content.
Oh, right,
that truly caters to their specific interests.
So how do they deal with that? Do they just give up?
Not at all. In fact, they get very creative. The sources describe how many Fujoshi become
What does that mean?
which means self-sufficient farmers.
Self-sufficient farmers.
Yeah, they're not just passive consumers of content. They actually become creators themselves.
Oh, that's so cool.
Isn't that cool? They'll write their own stories, draw their own illustrations, and even organize, which are like fan-made publications.
Oh, wow.
And which are conventions to share and even sell their work.
It's like how fans of a band will travel to see them or follow them on tour.
Yes.
You know? It's that dedication.
It's a commitment.
That willingness to go the extra mile to experience something you're so passionate about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
It speaks to the universal drive of fandom, really, when you think about it. But it also leads us to the big question. The one that seems to baffle a lot of people outside of the fandom.
You mean why women are drawn to BL in the first place?
Precisely.
Okay.
It's interesting because nobody really questions why men enjoy action movies or women read romance novels.
Yeah, it seems so obvious.
But female enjoyment of BL seems to spark a different kind of curiosity.
It's like this unspoken assumption that women should only be interested in certain types of stories.
Right.
And BL kind of falls outside of those expectations.
And it raises some interesting questions about societal norms and how we perceive female desire, you know?
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
But even within the Fujoshi community, there isn't always a clear-cut answer as to, like, why they're drawn to BL.
You mean they don't all consciously think, oh, I want to read about this?
Yeah. One source actually compares it to, like, falling down a rabbit hole. Like, you just stumble upon this story that resonates with you.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're hooked, you know?
Yeah, grabs you.
And it speaks to something almost subconscious, like a hidden desire being unlocked.
It's like this whole new world opens up.
Exactly.
And they can't get enough of it.
It's like a portal to a different dimension.
So if even the Fujoshi themselves can't really articulate why they're drawn to it, how do we even begin to make sense of this?
Well, that's where research comes in. Thankfully, some scholars have actually explored this very question.
Okay.
And one research paper that's highlighted in our sources offers 3 potential explanations.
Okay.
And I think they're worth examining.
Yeah, let's dive into those.
Let's dive in. Welcome back to our deep dive on Fujoshi. So we were just about to kind of unpack those 3 potential explanations for why BL resonates so strongly with women.
Yeah. So what's the first one?
Well, the first one is that women might be drawn to BL as a way to kind of reject those rigid heterosexual romance tropes.
Oh, I can totally see that.
Yeah.
You know how many traditional romance stories rely on that strong male, weak female dynamic?
Yeah.
It gets old.
It's so predictable.
Fast.
Yeah, and our sources suggest that a lot of Fujoshi express this feeling of being tired of those predictable narratives.
And we've seen it all before.
They want something different.
Yeah.
They're looking for something
new
that breaks free from those restrictive gender roles.
And BL offers that freedom.
Well, it can.
Okay.
You know, one source specifically mentions a BL manga where both of the male characters are strong and independent.
Okay.
But their relationship is built on mutual respect and understanding, not on one dominating the other.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a dynamic you don't often see in mainstream romance.
No.
So it's not just about seeing 2 men in a romantic relationship.
Right.
It's about seeing a different kind of relationship altogether.
Yeah.
One that kind of challenges our assumptions about masculinity and romance.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and that leads us to the second insight, which is the potential for gender power reversal within BL.
Oh, no, this is where it gets interesting.
This is juicy.
Yeah.
So the absence of female characters in BL creates this really interesting space where female desire and control can be explored in a way that's kind of difficult in traditional romance.
Okay.
Think about it, like in a typical romance novel, the woman is often the object of desire,
Right.
the one being pursued.
She's the damsel.
Exactly.
Right.
But in BL, the female reader is actually kind of in a position of power.
Oh.
She's the one observing.
Oh, wow.
She's the one choosing which characters she wants to see together.
Okay.
The one kind of dictating the dynamics of the relationship.
So even though she's not like literally a character
Exactly.
in the story,
Exactly.
she still has this sense of agency
Yes.
and control.
And that can be a really powerful experience for women who maybe feel constrained
Right.
by societal expectations in their real lives.
I can see that.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because some sources even talk about this idea of like the female reader finding a sense of power in placing these male characters in the submissive role.
Okay, so kind of flipping that traditional dynamic.
Yeah, it's like a way of exploring those power dynamics in a safe space where they can kind of experiment with those roles and see how it feels.
But isn't there a risk that even with these reversed roles, we're still kind of perpetuating certain power dynamics?
Right.
Like if one character is always the dominant one and the other submissive,
Yeah.
isn't that still kind of playing into traditional gender roles a little bit?
That's a great point, and it's actually a point that's debated within the Fujoshi community itself.
Okay.
I think the answer lies in recognizing that PL, like any genre, has a spectrum,
Yep.
right? So some stories might reinforce those traditional power dynamics, while others might actively try to subvert them.
Right.
And it's really up to the individual reader to kind of critically engage with the content and decide what resonates with them.
So it's about being mindful
Yeah,
of those power dynamics and choosing stories that align with your own values.
exactly.
Got it.
And it's also about recognizing that BL as a genre is constantly evolving, and these conversations about representation and power are ongoing.
Okay, so it's a dynamic thing.
Very dynamic.
Okay.
So that was the second insight, the power dynamics.
Okay.
And then the third insight focuses on the idea of BL offering kind of a space for freer sexual imagination, particularly for women.
This is a complex one.
It is a very complex topic, but I think it's important to acknowledge the social constraints that still exist around female sexuality in many societies.
Absolutely.
You know, women are often expected to be demure, to downplay their desires.
Right.
And BL, as our sources suggest, can provide this kind of safe space to explore those desires without judgment.
So it's not necessarily about the explicitness of the content,
No, not necessarily.
but more about the freedom to kind of engage with sexuality on their own terms.
Yeah, exactly.
Without feeling the need to conform to those societal expectations.
That's a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
One source describes it as like a kind of liberation,
Okay.
a space where women can explore their fantasies and desires without shame
Right.
or fear of reprisal.
Like a secret garden where those unspoken desires can kind of blossom.
Exactly. But I'm curious about something.
Oh yeah, what's up?
If it's about exploring these themes of like power and desire and breaking free from traditional roles, why does it have to be a male-male relationship? Couldn't those same themes be explored in, say, a lesbian romance?
That's a great question.
Right.
And one that I bet a lot of people are wondering.
And one that the research actually addresses.
Okay.
It seems like the answer lies in this idea of BL offering kind of a truly separate world and escape from the realities and limitations of everyday life.
Oh, so it's about creating a space that feels fundamentally different from the heteronormative world that we live in.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's about stepping outside of those familiar narratives and immersing oneself in a world where the rules are different, possibilities are endless, and the focus is solely on that relationship between two men.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture now.
Yeah.
It's not just about the romance itself.
Right.
It's about using that romance as a lens to explore these broader themes of identity and desire and even societal norms.
Exactly.
But isn't there a risk that by focusing solely on male relationships,
Yeah.
we're excluding other perspectives and experiences?
That's a really valid point, and it highlights the importance of diversity and representation in the BL genre itself. You know, the more voices and perspectives we have creating and consuming BL,
Yeah.
the richer and more nuanced those narratives become.
And the less likely it is that like any single perspective or stereotype will dominate the
Exactly.
conversation.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that Fujoshi come from all walks of life.
Right.
With different backgrounds, experiences, and values.
Right.
And those differences should be celebrated and reflected in the stories that they create and enjoy.
Totally.
So we've talked about like the psychological appeal of BL, but what about the social aspects? You know, we touched on the idea of community earlier, but I'm curious to hear more about the specific dynamics within these Fujoshi communities.
Yeah, like what's it like to be part of that?
Well, one thing that stands out in the sources is this strong emphasis on respect within the fandom.
Respect for what? Like, what does that mean?
Well, respect for each other's preferences, for one thing.
Okay.
So whether it's about, you know, favorite pairings or genres or levels of explicitness,
Yeah.
there's this real sense of acceptance and understanding within the community.
It's like we're all here because we love BL, so let's just celebrate this shared passion
Exactly.
without judgment.
Exactly. And that shared passion often extends beyond just like online discussions or conventions.
You mean like they form actual friendships?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our sources mention Fujoshi organizing meetups,
Okay.
attending events together,
Wow.
even collaborating on creative projects together.
That's really cool.
It speaks to the power of fandom to forge these genuine connections and create a sense of belonging.
It's like finding your tribe,
Yeah.
a group of people who get you
Yeah.
and share your enthusiasm.
And that sense of belonging can be incredibly powerful, especially for those who might feel kind of marginalized or misunderstood because of their interest in BL.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's a safe haven where they can kind of geek out
Exactly.
without judgment,
Yes.
explore their fantasies,
Yeah.
connect with people who understand.
Yeah.
But what about the impact on the real world? Does this kind of stay confined to the realm of fandom, or does it spill over into other aspects of their lives?
Well, that's a great question, and that's actually what we'll explore in our final part.
Oh, I can't wait.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Fujoshi world.
Yes.
We've really kind of explored the origins of the term, the psychological and social dynamics, and now I think it's time to look at its impact
Yes.
on the real world.
Yeah, we've talked about how Fujoshi are very active
Right.
creators and participants within their fandom,
Mm-hmm.
but their influence extends far beyond that.
Yeah,
You know, the rising popularity of BL, particularly in Asia, is actually starting to have a really noticeable impact
Oh, wow.
on mainstream culture.
So we're talking about BL going from kind of like a niche interest
Yeah.
to something more mainstream.
Yes, and it's a fascinating phenomenon.
It is.
Our sources point to an increasing presence of BL in like mainstream media, like everywhere, from TV dramas and movies to
Wow.
music and even advertising.
Really?
Yeah, there are now dedicated streaming platforms for BL content.
Wow.
And some of these series are garnering millions of views.
That's incredible.
Not just in Asia, but globally.
It makes you wonder what's driving that shift.
Yeah.
Is it just that the entertainment industry is finally like recognizing the commercial potential
Right.
of this market?
Mhm.
Or is there something kind of deeper at play?
I think it's a combination of factors.
Okay.
On the one hand, Fujoshi represent a very significant and passionate consumer base.
Uh-huh.
And as we've discussed, their dedication to the genre is undeniable.
Yeah, they go hard.
They do.
Yeah.
So naturally, the entertainment industry is taking notice.
Right.
But I think it also speaks to a broader kind of cultural shift,
Yeah.
particularly in countries like Japan, Thailand, and South Korea, where BL has gained immense popularity.
So it's not just about the stories themselves.
Right.
It's about what their popularity kind of says about changing attitudes
Yeah,
towards same-sex relationships in general.
exactly. Like the fact that BL is being adapted for these mainstream audiences kind of suggests a growing acceptance or at least curiosity
Yeah.
about different relationship dynamics.
Right? Like people are becoming more open-minded.
Yeah, and one of the sources even points to BL as like a potential catalyst for greater understanding and tolerance of LGBTQ plus individuals in societies where traditional values still hold sway.
That's a powerful thought.
It is.
But as with anything that kind of enters the mainstream, there are risks involved, right?
Of course.
Like, isn't there a danger of BL kind of losing its edge, its subversiveness?
Yeah.
If it becomes too commercialized.
Absolutely. There's always that risk of commodification,
Yeah.
of something authentic and unique being watered down
Right.
to appeal to a wider audience.
Right, to make it more palatable.
Exactly. And some of the sources do express concern about this, particularly when it comes to the representation of LGBTQ plus individuals within those mainstream BL adaptations.
Okay.
There's a fear that studios might kind of shy away from portraying more complex or challenging aspects of those relationships in order to avoid controversy or alienating a wider audience.
Was it the classic tension between art and commerce?
Exactly.
Trying to stay true to the spirit of something while also making it palatable to a wider audience.
It's a difficult balance to strike.
Yeah, it is. So how do Fujoshi themselves feel about this whole shift toward the mainstream?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag based on what I've seen in these sources.
Okay.
Some welcome the increased visibility.
Yeah.
They see it as an opportunity to kind of introduce BL to a wider audience and maybe even normalize same-sex relationships.
Yeah.
But others are a little more wary,
Okay.
worried that their beloved genre will be stripped of its authenticity and nuance
Right.
in the process.
Yeah,
So it's a complex issue with no easy answers.
it is. And I imagine it must be tricky for creators too.
Yeah.
Like, how do they navigate this new landscape,
Right.
balancing that artistic integrity with commercial viability?
It's a tightrope walk for sure.
Yeah.
But one thing that's clear from the sources is that Fujoshi are not passive observers in this process.
Okay.
They're very actively using their voices and their influence to kind of shape the direction of BL. They're writing reviews, engaging in online discussions, organizing petitions, even crowdfunding projects to support creators who share their vision.
Wow, so they're not just consuming, they're actively participating
Yeah,
in the evolution of the genre.
exactly. And that active participation speaks to the power of fandom.
Yeah.
Fujoshi understand the nuances and complexities of BL, and they're not afraid to demand better representation, more diverse storylines, and greater authenticity from the industry.
It's inspiring to see a community using its collective voice
Yeah.
to advocate for change, not just within their own fandom,
Right.
but within the broader culture.
Exactly. And that's what's so fascinating about the Fujoshi phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that subcultures, even those that might seem kind of niche or unconventional, can have a ripple effect on the wider world.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way.
They can challenge norms, spark conversations, and even contribute to positive social change.
It's like holding up a mirror to society, reflecting both its anxieties and its aspirations.
Exactly, and by engaging with these subcultures,
Yeah.
listening to their stories, understanding their perspectives, we can gain a much richer understanding of the world around us and the diverse ways in which people find connection and meaning and joy.
Well, I think this has been a truly fascinating deep dive.
Me too.
We've journeyed from the origins of the term Fujoshi all the way to its impact on mainstream culture, exploring themes of identity and desire,
And
community and social change.
It's been really great.
It has. It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Likewise, it's always fascinating to kind of delve into these subcultures and discover the richness and complexity that they hold.
Me too. And thank you, listeners, for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Fujoshi.
We hope you learned something.
Yeah, we hope you gained some valuable insights into the power of fandom.
And until next time,